Hey everyone, One Dragon here. Today I'm going to be comparing how the police or wanted system works in the current patch 1.63 to the various footage you see of 2.0. I'll also be discussing how various districts have different law enforcement, the use of AVs, and vehicle combat. I have not played 2.0 or Phantom Liberty, however, it's easy to see that the 2.0 overhaul will be massive. Despite this, I still decided to make this video and record footage of what things are like now, so I can do some more detailed comparisons once 2.0 and Phantom Liberty are out. First of all, for those of you that don't know the existing wanted system, or as they call it on stream, the heat system, it already has various forces that attack V depending on which district you commit crimes in. Within Night City, you obviously fight the NCPD, however, in the Badlands you face Militech, in Coastview Pacifica, specifically that area around Batty's Hotel, you have the Afterlife Mercs, and towards the border you have the Border Forces. Right now, the different forces vary in the type of units you fight, and their mid-fight commentary. Also, the heat system currently goes up to the 4th star, whereas CDPR's streams show it going up to 5 stars. In 1.63, the NCPD are the only law enforcement that utilize robots, and dialogue-wise you might hear officers complaining that they're not getting paid enough for their job. Currently, they are also the only law enforcement at the 4th and final star to use MaxTac. Next, in the Badlands, Militech are reinforced with heavy gunners, and at the 4th star, the Zetatech Octant, or a big flying drone, appear. The Afterlife Mercs are the only wanted system that send a squad of netrunners, and unlike the other law enforcement groups, the Mercs are thrilled by the combat.
Woo-wee! Let's fucking go!
However, when I was testing them, they only came in small groups of 3 or 4, making them the easiest to deal with. Finally, the Border Force is a little bit different, having a massive group of 30 or so people stationed at the southern border of Night City with 20 or so turrets. You can also hear a couple of border officers discussing scamming rich people as they cross the border.
Next well-dressed tune comes by, take him aside. We'll search him.
They'll sack us. Can't just clip them clean. Sooner or later, one of them's gonna talk.
Fucking hell, I gotta walk you gonks through everything? You search the guy till he snaps, or he gets bored enough to buy you out himself.
Nice. Hey, aren't you with some gang in town?
Police system mechanics. In 1.63, there are a few ways to trigger the police system. First, getting close and personal with officers. Standing too close to them for too long will aggro them once they detect you. Obviously, there's threatening or attacking officers by aiming down sights or attacking them directly. Next is killing a civilian, even if there are no officers around, but not the ones that draw their weapon against you first. And lastly, there's committing a crime like stealing a car within a certain proximity of a patrolling police officer. Normally, hijacking a car does not trigger the police, however, if you're within proximity of any patrolling officers, then it will. Since launch, the most common critique of the police system is how they spawn. Currently, it is mostly behind the player and they arrive on foot. However, on streams you can see based on the minimap that they spawn on surrounding streets and arrive in vehicles. Once triggered, the heat system continues to escalate either by committing more crimes like killing civilians or officers that come to attack you, and at the 4th and final star, there are a couple of unique things that happen. First of all, excluding Pacifica and the Badlands, there is what's known as a crime prevention system, which are those turrets that end up shooting at you. These turrets absolutely demolish vehicles, so if you remain in your car, it'll explode, resulting in death. In theory, these turrets could prevent the player from easily driving away and allow the NCPD to keep up on foot. From what I've seen of the footage, this crime prevention system or the turrets seem to be removed in 2.0, instead having MaxTac hack the vehicle to prevent the player from driving away. Lastly, there are a couple of ways to de-aggro the police. The first method is breaking line of sight and hiding, which takes a while for the stars to fall off. Next, there's entering a mission area, which makes the stars wear off faster, and also entering a store, which makes them drop off instantly once you get close enough to a vendor. I also wanted to highlight a couple of other issues when encountering the NCPD in 1.63. First of all, quick hacks do not work on the police spawned by the heat system. Now, I'm not sure why this is the case, and maybe they're supposed to have some insane defense against netrunners, but most of the forces that are spawned by this heat system cannot be quick hacked. Another note is that for the most part, they do not give experience, skill progression XP, and have limited loot. This is the main reason why I don't bother fighting them in the current patch, and I'm not sure if that's going to change in 2.0. The final issue, which does look to be fixed, is that after defeating MaxTac, there's very limited spawn. In the current version, after defeating the initial rush of MaxTac officers, the police mostly stop coming after you. Based on the streams, the police system seems to be more like an endless encounter unless you disengage and lose them. While we're talking about MaxTac, I did test them a lot more in 1.63. Currently, it's possible to restrict the police to only make MaxTac spawn by taking down enough civilians to hit 4 stars before any of the police spawn. Overall, MaxTac may be the hardest enemies to fight in the open world, especially considering how they flank the player, dashing around and dodging projectiles using Korenzakovs. However, if you avoid getting surrounded, they're easy enough to deal with, especially since I was one-shotting them with how OP builds are currently. However, in the gameplay footage shown on CDPR streams, they seem significantly tougher, or at least more durable, especially since they have health bars which are normally reserved for boss fights. On stream, they've showcased and discussed 4 of 5 potential archetypes showing up, for example, heavy gunners, mantis blade users, or snipers. Currently, these types of enemies show up as cyber psychos, or you can fight these archetypes all in the secret ending. Of course, MaxTac's difficulty is hard to judge based on stream footage, so I'll reevaluate them when I get my hands on 2.0. The next mechanic I wanted to discuss was the use of AVs. I personally was a bit skeptical of the trailer and the footage where they did not fire at enemies being dropped off via AV. I was really hoping they would remove the invisible wall that defends enemies as they're dropped off, because it really doesn't make any sense. Currently, AVs drop off units in a few missions, but the ones where the player is in combat is limited to mission Gimme Danger and the Altercator ending. In Gimme Danger, I tested firing at the Arasaka soldiers that are dropped off when the doors of the AV open and the invisible wall is present. However, I typically use tech weapons which pierce through walls and other enemies to wipe them out. If you get a side angle of the AV, you can clear out the entire group in one shot. Next up, vehicular combat. If you've been subscribed to my channel for a while, you'll know that in patch 1.3, I tested non-modded gang and NCPD chase mechanics. Overall, these mechanics have been in the game since launch, but they were always interesting to play around with. In many areas throughout Night City, gangs or the police spawn in vehicles, and it's possible to aggro them and get them to chase you. In my testing, it's obvious to see that there's some kind of rudimentary mechanics implemented into the base game, including chasing the player if they're in a vehicle, shooting from vehicles, and exiting the vehicle if the player exits theirs. However, at times their pathfinding was questionable, and I ran into other issues like them falling through the world, and of course, many civilians and their vehicles would often despawn and pop in seemingly randomly. Although I've upgraded my computer since then and didn't run into those issues again. Another issue which does seem to be addressed that exists in 1.63 is the durability or health bar of vehicles. They generally take damage in the same way, losing the bonnet or hood of the car first, and then they eventually explode. I assume that vehicles are tankier in 2.0, especially from the hits they take in the footage. In terms of combat in 1.63, you can't draw any weapons, however you can use quick hacks from vehicles. As shown in 2.0 and the Phantom Liberty footage, vehicle combat has received a complete upgrade. There's clear footage of using weapons and quick hacks from vehicles, And the AI seems to be improved with police intentionally running over V or T-boning V's vehicle. There's even footage of the use of roadblocks and other sorts of strategies. According to the information and footage that's out there, vehicular combat is extended in Phantom Liberty, including the use of mounted guns and missiles, which looks insanely fun. After taking a brief look at the perks in the builder linked by CDPR, there's a lot of new mechanics with vehicular combat that should be fun to experiment with in 2.0 and Phantom Liberty. Overall, I'm excited to play around in 2.0 and happy to see the existing systems being upgraded and potentially being more challenging as well. One critique that I have is, of course, the very limited motivation we have to ever fight the police or trigger that heat system in the first place. I hope to see these mechanic upgrades applied to the various gangs and corporations we fight as well, and not strictly the police. Currently, if I do accidentally trigger the heat system, I just run into a store and then the stars drop off. I'll also take a look at builds and the various changes when 2.0 drops, which is either later today or early tomorrow for me, so be sure to subscribe if you'd like to hear my thoughts on that. See you next time, Tooms.